Hello everyone, welcome to my new video. So in this video we are going to discuss about diabetes. So what is diabetes? So diabetes, we know it's a chronic metabolic disorder, and in this video we will also discuss the different types of diabetes. So mostly the diabetes, diabetes it is in two types, and one form is diabetes insipidus. One form we can write, it is diabetes insipidus. One is diabetes insipidus and another one is diabetes mellitus. So mostly we know that diabetes, it's a chronic metabolic disorder, and most of the people thinks that diabetes means the increased blood glucose level. Diabetes is mostly associated with the increased blood glucose level, but it associated with blood glucose level, that is correct, but that association is only acceptable in case of diabetes mellitus. In case of diabetes insipidus, there is no connection with increased blood glucose level. So we will see what is the basic difference. So the diabetes insipidus, it is associated with the frequent urination. The symptoms, if we go through one by one, it is associated with frequent urination regardless of blood glucose level. So there is no connection of increased blood glucose level in diabetes insipidus. But if we see the diabetes mellitus, it is associated with increased blood glucose level. Increase blood glucose level. So diabetes mellitus, it associated with increased blood glucose level. Why it increased blood glucose level, will come to know. And diabetes mellitus is associated with increased blood glucose level, and insipidus is associated with frequent urination. If we see the diabetes, so if we see the diabetes mellitus first, that what is diabetes mellitus? Diabetes mellitus is like, first we need to know about little bit about the human anatomy. So suppose this is a human being. Let's suppose this is a human being, and in this human being, this is the pancreas. The pancreas is present here. This is pancreas. So this pancreas, it releases one hormone, and that hormone name is insulin. Insulin, the main function, it's regulate the blood glucose level. It regulate the blood glucose level. So when we ingest food or after taking the meal, what happens? Blood glucose level increases. At that time, insulin will be released by pancreas. So as insulin, it is our pancreas. So as insulin is released by pancreas, so lots and lots of insulin will be released, and that insulin will help the glucose molecules to enter inside the human cell. So this is blood vessels, for example, and these are lots of glucose molecules. These are all glucose, and these are our human cell. These are cell. So the insulin this blood glucose level. So now insulin molecule, what it will do? It will help these small glucose molecule to enter inside the cell. So if glucose molecule enters inside the human cell, then blood glucose level will be decreases. This is the main function. So it is the regulation, and it is done by insulin. So insulin will release by pancreas. So when insulin will be released? After taking the meal, if blood glucose level increases, then automatically insulin will be released by pancreas. Then pancreas insulin will be released, and those insulin will be go through the bloodstream, and then these glucose molecules, they will one by one, they will put this glucose molecule from blood circulation to inside the cell, and blood glucose level will be decreased. This is the normal physiology, and it is the regulation, and that regulation is done by insulin. So now what is diabetes mellitus then? As it is one type of diabetes, we are discussing both of them, and first we are discussing mellitus. So what is diabetes mellitus in that case? Mellitus is such a case when there is a insulin insufficiency in the blood circulation. Means pancreas will not able to synthesize sufficient amount of insulin. So if insulin concentration decrease insulin concentration in blood, if there is a decrease insulin concentration in bloodstream, and that case it could be a diabetes mellitus, but it is only one type. So it is in that case, if there is a decreased amount of insulin, then it will consider as type 1 diabetes mellitus, but it is diabetes mellitus if there is a insufficiency of insulin. Why there is a insufficiency of insulin? Why insulin concentration is decreased? Because the pancreas is not able to produce sufficient amount of insulin. There is a problem with that pancreas, and that's why pancreas is not able to produce sufficient amount of insulin. And those insulin, if insulin is not present, then there will be no one to put this red glucose molecules. As a red, I am just giving an example. So these red colored glucose molecules, there will be no one to push them inside the cell. So these are human cells. And these cells, they will now under starvation. So this is type 1 diabetes mellitus. This is diabetes mellitus, but it is type 1. Then if it is type 1, there will be type 2. And what is type 2 then? What is type 2? Type 2 is that, in that case, it is that there is a sufficient amount of insulin. There is a sufficient insulin. There is no problem with insulin. Insulin is sufficiently available in the blood. There is a sufficient amount of insulin in the blood circulation. In the entire human body, there is a sufficient amount of insulin. There is no problem at all with the concentration of the insulin or amount of insulin flowing across the blood vessel. There is no problem. Everything is correct. The problem is that, let's suppose this is a cell, and here is a insulin receptor. In next class we will see what is the receptor. So this is insulin receptor. So this here, insulin it has to be bind with that specific receptor, so that the glucose gate or doors for glucose molecule could be open. Mean insulin, it is a key. In that case, insulin, it is a key, and insulin act as a key, and it will fit with the lock, and lock is the receptor. It is the receptor. So it is the receptor. So that receptor will accept this insulin molecule, and once the receptor accepts the insulin molecule, or once the insulin will bind with specific receptor, at that time the doors for glucose molecule will be open. So this is the door. This is the door of glucose. This is the door for glucose molecule. So this door, it will open if there is a proper matching of insulin and with its receptor. If insulin does not bind with specific receptor, then these doors will not going to be open. It will be remain closed. It will be closed. If insulin binds, then only this door will be open. The thing is, in type 1 diabetes, if there is no insulin present in the blood, then there will be no key. If there is no key, then the lock will not going to be open. If this lock is not going to be open, these doors will be remain closed. It is a different type of lock. Lock is far away from the door. So if there is no insulin, then this lock will be remain closed and this door will be remain closed. It is not going to be open. So if there is door is closed, then this glucose molecule, it will not able to enter inside the cell. This is type 1 if there is no insulin present. But now what is in type 2? In type 2 there is a little bit, the problem is like in type 2 diabetes that there is a sufficient amount of insulin. There is no problem at all with that insulin. That the problem is with that lock. Now this lock is, now it got disturbed. This lock is now completely destroyed. We have sufficient amount of keys. We don't have any problem with key, but the problem, it is only present with the lock. So now the lock is not working properly. If this lock is not working, then this insulin molecule will not able to bind with that lock. So in that case also, the door will be remain closed. If the door will remain closed, this glucose molecule will not able to enter inside the cell. So this is type 2 diabetes mellitus. So in that case, this is type 2 diabetes mellitus when there is a insulin resistance because of the deformed receptor. So in short term we can write, in type 1 diabetes mellitus, we can say there is a no insulin downward arrow marks mean decrease insulin or no insulin. There is no insulin. And in type 2 diabetes mellitus, we can say that there is a insulin resistance. We can say that there is a insulin resistance. Why insulin is insulin resistance? Because cell is not responding. If cell is not responding to that insulin, because the receptor which is present on the cell surface, that receptor is deformed. It is not working properly. It is a damaged receptor, damaged lock. If lock is damaged, then this key will not able to enter inside the lock. And if key is not working, this lock is not working and key is not able to inside the lock, then this door will be not going to be open. It will be remain closed, and entire blood there will be high concentration of glucose molecule. Only there will be glucose molecules. So more and more, so blood glucose level will be increased. So more blood glucose means it is a kind of diabetes mellitus. So diabetes mellitus is always associated with increased blood glucose level. But why the blood glucose, there is an increased blood glucose level? It could be two types. When we're discussing the diabetes mellitus, we will see any other types of diabetes mellitus also, but mostly we can classify it into type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. So in type 1, where the diabetes is directly associated with and it depends upon insulin. If we keep insulin, then this lock will be automatically open. Because if we see the type 1, suppose this is the cell, this is nucleus, and this is insulin receptor, and this is the insulin molecule, and this is the gate for blood glucose, and glucose molecule enter from blood vessel to inside the cell. So this blood glucose molecule, it will only able to enter inside the cell if there is a binding of insulin with its receptor. So can we say that this insulin molecule, if it binds with this receptor, and in type 1 there is no problem with the receptor, the problem is only with the concentration and presence of insulin. So if this insulin, if we supply the sufficient amount of insulin, then there will be no problem. Then again this lock will be open and this door will be open and glucose molecule can easily enter. So can we say that opening of this door is directly dependent upon the presence of insulin, as the receptor is properly working. There is no problem with the receptor is completely fine. Problem means only with insulin. In type 1 there is no insulin present because pancreas is not able to produce sufficient amount of insulin. So if insulin is not present, then the receptor will not able to accept that insulin, then this door will be remain closed. So in type 1 diabetes mellitus, can we say that it is directly dependent upon insulin? Obviously we can say that, because only insulin insufficiency is there. That's why this door is not able to open. So if insulin will bind with receptor, this door will automatically gets open. So that's why in that case it is known as insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, or in short form insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, IDDM. This is called insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. In type 2 diabetes mellitus, if we see in type 2 diabetes mellitus, what it is, because this is the cell, this is cell, again we have a receptor, but in that case the receptor is not properly working. So let me draw a deformed receptor. Receptor is not properly working. So this is the insulin molecule. In type 2 insulin is sufficiently available, there is no problem. There is no problem with type 2. Insulin is sufficiently available. So if insulin is sufficiently available, but in that case the receptor is deformed. The receptor is deformed receptor. So insulin it will be bounce back. It will trying to bind with the receptor but not able to, because the acceptor is not in proper form. So this insulin molecule is not able to bind. If insulin molecule is not able to bind, then the door for the glucose molecule will remain closed, and this glucose molecule from blood circulation to the cell will not able to enter, and that's why in blood the blood glucose level, it will be increased. So can we say that in that case in type 2 diabetes mellitus there is no actually problem associated with insulin. Insulin is sufficiently present. So this diabetes mellitus is not directly dependent upon insulin. So the type 2 diabetes mellitus, then where it depends upon, means why it is occur. It mostly occurs because of this receptor. Receptor is not properly working. If receptor is properly working, then insulin, we have sufficient amount of insulin can easily bind and this door will be open. So in type 2 diabetes mellitus, actually there is no problem associated with insulin. Insulin is sufficiently available, but it is not able to bind with the receptor. So in that case, can we say that it is a non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus? Because diabetes mellitus is not only depend upon insulin, but it is not depend upon insulin. Instead it depend upon the deformed receptor characteristic. So that's why it is known as non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So it is known as non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. In short form, we can say that non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, why it is saying? Because we have sufficient amount of insulin in blood. We don't have any problem. Pancreas is sufficiently producing optimum amount of insulin, but even though pancreas is producing sufficient amount of insulin, this insulin is not able to bind with deformed receptors. As it's not able to bind with these deformed receptors, then also this door will remain closed. In both the case, door will be remain closed. In first case, if there is no insulin, in that case insulin not able to bind with the receptor, then also door will be remain closed. In second case, if sufficient amount of insulin is present, now this receptor is not working. In first case, we don't have any keys, lock is properly working. In second case, we have the keys and lock is not properly working in second situation. In both the case, if we don't have the proper lock, then also door will be closed. If we don't have the keys, then only door will be closed. In both the situation, door will be remain closed. So in both the case, door will be remain closed. In first case, we don't have sufficient amount of keys, means insulin, so it is insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. In second case, we have sufficient amount of insulin, we have keys, but now the receptor is not working, means in second case non-insulin dependent. In these diabetes mellitus is not depend upon insulin, because we have sufficient amount of insulin. It depends upon something else, means depends upon the receptor. So we don't say that receptor dependent diabetes mellitus, instead we say non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So this is the diabetes mellitus. Now we will see what is diabetes insipidus. So diabetes insipidus, we can say that in our human brain we have one organ which is known as hypothalamus, and we have another organ, this is hypothalamus, small gland, this is known as hypothalamus, and we have another organ up to this is hypothalamus, and here this is pituitary gland, this is pituitary gland. So we have two different glands, one is hypothalamus, one is pituitary gland. The thing is, this is anterior pituitary, this is anterior pituitary. When we'll go through the detailed anatomy of brain, we'll get to know what is this, what is the different function, the location and everything. And this is posterior pituitary, posterior pituitary gland. This is anterior pituitary and this is posterior pituitary. This is anterior and this is posterior. The thing is, these hypothalamus, it releases lots of hormones, and anterior pituitary also releases lots of hormones. Posterior pituitary, it releases only two hormones. One hormone, number one, it is oxytocin. And second hormone, it is released by antidiuretic hormone. Oxytocin released by posterior pituitary, and antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone is also known as vasopressin. It is also known as vasopressin. So antidiuretic hormone, it is known as vasopressin, and oxytocin is another hormone. So both these hormones are released by posterior pituitary. We will see the function of oxytocin in different videos, but our main concentration, it should be on antidiuretic hormone. As the name suggests, diuretic means any substance which increases urination. diuretics associated with more urination. Antidiuretic associated with, can we say, decrease urination. Means antidiuretic hormones is those hormones which are responsible for decreased urination. It reduces the urination. If we say diuretic hormones, if we say, then this is a hormone with increased urination. If we add anti word in front of that hormone with decreases urination. So antidiuretic hormones are those hormones which are responsible for decreased urination. So decreased urination. So thing is, diabetes, the name suggests it is diabetes insipidus. There is no related with more blood glucose level, nothing. Diabetes insipidus is such case where ADH or antidiuretic hormone, and ADH means antidiuretic hormone, ADH concentration decreases. If we have decreased amount of ADH concentration, then decrease, what is the function of ADH? It decreases urination. If we have decreased amount of ADH, then there will be no one to decrease the urination, so there will be in subsequent result will be more urination. So can you able to correlate the concept? The concept is antidiuretic hormone released by posterior pituitary, and posterior pituitary also releases oxytocin. We don't have any discussion today on oxytocin. We will directly discuss about antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone is a hormone which decreases urination. Diuretic means substances which increases urination. Antidiuretic hormones means substance which decreases urination. If ADH concentration decreases, downward arrow marks mean decrease. If ADH concentration decreases, then there will be no one to decrease the urination. If there will be no one to decrease the urination, then there will be more urination. So urination will be more. So that's why in diabetes insipidus it is associated with frequent urination. Hence it is known as a person needs to use the toilet more and more time. So that's why it is known as frequent urination. One symptoms, major symptoms. And if the person is urinating very frequently, then blood volume or water content will be decreases inside the body, and person will feel very thirsty. They will be very thirsty. So this is the main core concept of diabetes insipidus and diabetes mellitus. So diabetes insipidus, what is that? In what we can say, the diabetes insipidus, it's deficiency of ADH hormone. Deficiency of ADH hormone, and this ADH hormone, what is the main role? It regulates the water volume or water reabsorption from the kidney. Function we'll see afterwards, but main function of ADH hormones, it decreases urination. Decrease urination means it reabsorb the water from urine. So if ADH hormone is not present, then there will be no one to reabsorb the water from the urine, then urine volume will be more. So more urination or urine volume will be more urine volume. And this is the main core concept of diabetes. There are two different types of diabetes. So hope you have a clear concept about diabetes mellitus, and if you have any problem with that concept, you can directly write your question in the comment box, and I will be very happy to clear your doubts. Thank you everyone. Thank you so much.